Coming up on Marriage Today with Jimmy and Karen.
There have been so many times in my life when I stood at a place of doubt between two opinions, between what I saw and what God's Word said, what I experienced and what God said. And I was sitting there doubting, and the only thing that resolved my doubt is when I took a step of faith. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is the overcoming of doubt. Have you ever asked questions like, why does God allow me to suffer? Why doesn't He answer my prayers? Or why did God allow my loved one to die? All of us have questions and doubts sometimes toward God. It's normal from time to time. As we celebrate this very special Easter season, today we're talking honestly about our doubts and how we can learn to overcome any doubt in our lives. This is John 20, verse 19. It says, "Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in the midst and said to them, 'Peace be with you.' When He had said this, He showed them His hands and His side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. So Jesus said to them again, 'Peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you.' And when He had said this, He breathed on them and said to them, 'Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they're forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained.' Now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to them, 'We have seen the Lord.' So He said to them, 'Unless I see in His hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into His side, I will not believe.' And after 8 days His disciples were again inside, and Thomas with them. Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, 'Peace be to you.' Then He said to Thomas, 'Reach your finger here, and look at my hands, and reach your hand here, and put it into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believe.' And Thomas answered and said to Him, 'My Lord and my God.' Jesus said to Thomas, 'Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed.'" Now this is doubting Thomas, and that happened on Easter Sunday. And Jesus rose again and presented Himself to His disciples, but Thomas wasn't there. And when the disciples told Thomas that they had seen Jesus, he just said, "Well, I don't believe. I just don't believe. Unless I see Him and experience it for myself and touch His body, I will not believe." And then Jesus later said to him, "It's a good thing that you've believed, Thomas, having seen me, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed." And so He has this label. I hope it's not an eternal label. It's certainly a label for our sake, doubting Thomas. And that's the way we know Him. Now here's the good news. He resolved his doubts. He overcame his doubts. And Thomas went to India, and he preached the gospel in India. And there are many believers there, and there's a shrine to Thomas in India, and he was ultimately martyred by spears for his faith there. And so he didn't remain a doubter. He was a great man of faith, and he changed nations through his ministry. But it began with doubt, and he's well known for this. But here's what I want to say to all of us. All the other disciples doubted too. It wasn't just Thomas. This is John's gospel, and John mentions Thomas more than the other writers of the gospels. But listen to what Luke says about Easter Sunday. "Now as they said these things, Jesus stood in the midst of them and said to them, 'Peace be to you.' But they were terrified and frightened and supposed they had seen a spirit. And He said to them, 'Why are you troubled, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Behold my hand and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have.' When He had said this, He showed them His hands and His feet." All the disciples doubted. It wasn't just Thomas. This is the account of when Jesus appeared to them at first, and they were all terrified and frightened. And Jesus said, "Why do you doubt? Come and handle me," just the way that Thomas had to handle Jesus before he believed. The other disciples did too. In Matthew 28, after the resurrection, after Jesus had appeared to His disciples a number of times, Matthew 28:16, "Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had appointed for them. When they saw Him, they worshiped Him, but some doubted." Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And we would think to ourselves, if I had been there on Resurrection Sunday, if I had seen Jesus, if I had touched Jesus, it would totally resolve all my doubts, and I would have no doubts whatsoever. But it's simply not true. They were there. They handled Jesus. They saw Jesus after the resurrection. But still they doubted. But here's the truth. All of us doubt. It's a human issue. All of us have doubts, and we can resolve our doubts. And certainly the disciples resolved their doubts. But the word doubt, when the Bible uses the word doubt, it's the Greek word distazo, and it literally means two ways. And I'm standing right here in front of this wonderful group of people, and there is an aisle here, and there's an aisle here. I can see both ways. And that's what literally doubt means. Faith means there's God's way, and I believe God's way. There's only one way that I'm going to follow. I've completely resolved my doubts, and it's God's way. I just see one thing. But doubt means God says something, but people say something. God says something, but circumstances say something. God says something, but my past says something over here. The Word of God says something, but there are skeptics and doubters and unbelievers and atheists and people who refuse to believe. And so I'm standing between two ways. That's literally what doubt means, is double vision. I'm looking both ways, and because of that, I'm hesitating, and I don't have conviction. And so people who knew Jesus and walked with Jesus and saw Jesus still doubted, because it's a part of our human condition. It's just something that we do. It's something that we need to overcome because it can create tremendous problems. But it's something that we just do. And so if you're here today and you're dealing with doubt, join the club. We deal with doubt, but we need to overcome our doubts. We need to be people of faith. Let me talk about three truths about doubt very quickly. And here are three things that are true about doubt. Number one, there's a difference between doubt and unbelief. There's a big difference between doubt and unbelief. Henry Drummond says this about doubt. Doubt is can't believe. Unbelief is won't believe. Doubt is honest. Unbelief is obstinacy. Doubt is looking for light. Unbelief is content with darkness. In all of our lives, we're going to doubt, but doubt doesn't mean that I'm an unbeliever. I'm trying to believe. My intellect, my senses, my experiences, my hurts. I'm trying to find a place of faith. I'm just struggling to find a place of faith. I'm looking for light. But unbelief just will not engage. It won't even try. It just declares before any effort is made, I won't believe. And so that's the difference between doubt and unbelief. The second truth about doubt is Jesus was always gracious to doubters. This is what we need to understand. If you're dealing with doubt, God's not your enemy, God's your friend. God was not hostile. Jesus was not hostile to Thomas, and he was not hostile to Peter. He did not reject Thomas because of his doubts. In fact, he used him greatly. But he had to resolve those doubts. He didn't reject Peter because of his doubts on the Sea of Galilee. In fact, he used him greatly, but he had to resolve those doubts. If you have doubts today and you feel like that God can't handle your doubts, that he's offended by your doubts, and in other words, he won't help you, you're not going to go to God and ask him for help and be able to resolve your doubts. You just need to know if you're doubting and you're a sincere doubter, you have a friend in Jesus, and he can handle your doubts. He's not at all offended or troubled by that. It's something that he can handle. The third truth about doubt is doubt in and of itself is not sin. It only becomes sin when it causes us to disobey God, especially long term. And you say, well, Jimmy, I'm dealing with some doubts. Okay, great. For Thomas, it was 8 days. From the time that Jesus appeared, and Thomas would not believe the account of his fellow disciples, to the time that Jesus reappeared 8 days later, it was a little over a week. That's great. If you have doubts, just make up your mind. It's not going to define my life. This isn't going to go on for 10 years. This is not going to go on for a long period of time. I'm not going to keep this doubt. I'm doubting. I've got a real sincere doubt or doubts. There's not any problem with that. But I'm not going to let this become a long-term issue that keeps me from doing what God wants me to do in my life. So you say, well, how do I resolve my doubts? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. How to turn chronic doubt into overcoming faith. If you have doubts this morning, and I bet you do. I bet you have an area of doubt. Maybe a small area, it may be a big area. Maybe one, it may be many. But if you have doubt, how can I turn doubt into faith? Let me give you 3 steps real quickly. Number 1, turn your doubts to God. You'll never resolve your doubts until you turn your doubts to God. God can handle our doubts. In fact, God's sympathetic to our doubts. And he wants to help us resolve our doubts. When I first got saved, I think I'd been saved for in fact, I know I'd been saved for about a year. And I worked at a place, and I didn't know anything about the Bible. I knew very little about the Bible. I had never studied the scriptures before getting saved, and so I was a baby Christian. And I worked with a guy, and I really liked him. He was a nice guy, but he was a skeptic.
And in fact, he wasn't just a skeptic, he was a very smart skeptic with a lot of information against the Bible. And so I would go to the bookstore. And there was a Christian bookstore here in town at the time, and I knew the owner, and I went to the owner and I said, I want a book on this to help me understand this. And so I read many books, and I would go to my friend at work and I would say to him, now let me say something. You've been saying this and this and this. I read books about evolution. I read books about creation science. I read books about everything he brought up. I'd go read books about it. And I'd go back to him, I'd say, you said this and that's not true. And we would just sit there and talk. And I got to where I could articulate in response to him the things that he was saying. Because let me say this, God's always right, and God's not ever threatened by any information. Did you know that? All science points to God. All honest science points to God. All honest information points to God. The creation declares the glory of God. We don't have to be afraid of anything that anybody would say because there's an intelligent response for it. So I just kept coming back to him. And after a while, he knew that whatever he said, I was going to come back with a response. Until one day he came into work and he looked like he had been through World War III. And he sat right next to me at work. And so he walked in and sat down. And I looked over at him. He looked terrible. And I said, are you okay? He said, no, I'm not okay. And I said, what's wrong? And he told me what was going on. He said, Jimmy, I need Jesus. I need to receive Jesus in my life. I need to get saved. I led him in a prayer that morning to receive Jesus as his Lord. And I see him in church every so often. And I've heard the sincere doubts of precious Christians over the years. And what I always encourage them to do is turn that toward God. God knows your hurt. He knows your suffering. He knows that because of what just happened, that could be interpreted that he doesn't care, or that he doesn't love you, or that he's not protecting you or whatever, and it's not true. Do not let that doubt, do not let that hurt cause you to turn away from God, because I'm telling you, regardless of your circumstances, he loves you. See, the devil always loves to interpret our circumstances to accuse God so that he can divide our relationship with God. About 20 years ago, Karen and I went through the worst season in our lives. It was about a 6-week period of time. And in that 6-week period of time, 3 devastating events happened, one behind the other. The first was personal issue. Devastating issue in my life. The second one was a near death of a family member, very close family member, under tragic circumstances. And it wasn't just something that happened, it was something that happened over a period of time, that it was devastating. And when I say the word devastating, I'm not being theatrical. I mean a devastating event. The third devastating thing that happened in that 6-week period of time is Karen got hit by a semi-truck in her car. And so she can't remember any of it because it knocked her out. They took her into the emergency room, and I came right in behind them. And so when the doctor came in, they started working on her. They said, Mr. Evans, you're going to have to go out in the waiting room. You can't stay in here. So my mind is just spinning. This is the third in 6 weeks. And I'm talking about third in a series of devastating events. And I'm walking out in the emergency room, and I'm just thinking, you know, God must be finished with me. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen with my ministry, my family. I mean, does he love me? Does he care? Is he against me? Did I do something? I don't know what I did. Did I do something? And so I walked out in the emergency room, waiting room, and I just stood over in the corner by myself, and I said to the Lord, standing right there, if you're trying to say something to me, I want you just to say it to me, but don't kill my family. That's what I said to the Lord. Don't kill my family. Just say it to me. And the Lord said, clearly as I've ever heard the Lord, I am trying to say something to you, Jimmy. And I said, what? And he said, I love you. You know, and I was just thinking, boy, I'm sure glad you don't hate me. You know, you've got a funny way of showing love. I didn't say that because I was already in enough trouble. You know, I didn't want to push the envelope. I mean, I just thought, what do you mean you're trying to say that you love me? What do you mean by that? Because I could not process it. I could not process it. But let me say this. I made my mind up standing there. I'm not going to let this cause me to to turn my heart away from God. Because it's real easy at times like that just to shake your fist at heaven and say, okay, well, if this is the way you're going to be, well, I can deal with that, and just go and turn your doubts to the bartender or your friends or, psychic hotline or something like that. But I made up my mind. I'm not going to turn away from God. I'm going to believe that there's something good in this. Well, let me say this, 20 years later. The next 6 months in our lives were the most glorious 6 months that we had ever spent in our lives. I'm telling you that God did not cause any of those things to happen. I absolutely believe that. But I'm telling you one thing, He took a sow's ear and made a silk purse out of it. We were showered with love. That individual, after Karen had that wreck, I'm telling you, cards, flowers, people at our house. I gained 20 pounds from all the food people brought. I asked Karen if she could get sick more often. God healed us in the deepest part of our hearts through that circumstance. More than I could preach an entire sermon just on that point. That individual in our family that almost died in tragic circumstances got gloriously saved, and their lives have been dramatically different ever since. Every issue that caused me to doubt God was resolved. But I made up my mind, I'm not turning this away from God. Number 2, and I'm almost finished here. Trust God's word to resolve your doubts. Romans 10:17. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Turn your doubt toward God and trust God's word to resolve your doubt. Not skeptics, not unbelievers, but God's word. Thomas had a word from God. Jesus told the disciples over and over before he was crucified, I'm going to be crucified and resurrected on the third day. See, the problem with Thomas isn't that he didn't believe the other disciples. The problem with Thomas is he didn't believe Jesus. Jesus told him, I'm going to be resurrected on the third day. I'm going to be raised up on the third day. So when Thomas heard that Jesus was alive and he rejected it, he was rejecting the word that God gave him. When Peter saw Jesus walking up on the Sea of Galilee, he said, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come and I'll come. And Jesus said, come. And he stepped out on the water walking toward Jesus. And then he changed his mind when he saw the waves coming. He rejected the word and began to sink. And Jesus walked up and said, why did you doubt? Let me say this. According to God, his word should resolve our doubts. If you don't have a word, doubt. If you don't have a word from God, that's fine. But once you get a word from God, that word can resolve your doubts. Let me say this. What is going to resolve your doubts? Is it going to be the word from an expert that opposes God? Or a change in your emotions or your circumstances? But according to God, his word is enough to resolve our doubts. And number 3 step in turning doubt into faith is to take a step of faith and see what happens. There have been so many times in my life when I stood at a place of doubt between two opinions, between what I saw and what God's word said, what I experienced and what God said. And I was sitting there doubting. And the only thing that resolved my doubt is when I took a step of faith. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is the overcoming of doubt. Many times when you act in faith, you have doubt. But you've made your mind up, I'm not going to stay in this place of indecision any longer. I've chosen and I'm choosing God. I'm turning my doubt toward God. I'm going to believe the word of God over everything that anyone else says or what I see or think or feel or hear. I'm going to step out and I'm going to do it. And once I've done it, then I experience God and my doubt becomes overcoming faith. Many, many places in my life today that are absolutely rock solid in faith started out with doubt, just like Thomas.
Well, Karen and I want to say Happy Easter to all of you. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most important event, in human history that set the world free from the bondage of Satan and gave us the gift of eternal life, and just by the grace of God. So what a wonderful holiday that we are celebrating right now. And so I just hope that this program today is encouraging to you. Overcoming doubt, overcoming anything really, that's why Jesus came, is to set us free so that we could live the way that God intended for us to live, out from under the dominion of the devil and living in the freedom of God. Right now, for your gift of any amount here to Marriage Today, I want to send you my booklet, A Mindset Free. And it talks about doubt. It talks about anger. It talks about all different kinds of issues that we deal with, lust, the sexual issues. This book really talks about getting your mind set free and keeping your mind free so that you can live the way that God intends. For $45 or more right now, your gift to Marriage Today, we want to send you the full 8-part CD series called The Overcoming Life, plus the book, A Mind Set Free. And again, this talks about comparison. It talks about rejection. It talks about fear. It talks about doubt. It talks about overcoming so many issues that we all deal with in our lives. If your gift right now of $80 or more, we want to send you the full DVD series, 8-part DVD series, The Overcoming Life, plus the booklet, A Mind Set Free. These are important, life-changing resources. Here's how you can get them.
Experience Jimmy's inspiring series, The Overcoming Life, on CD or DVD. We'll also include the book, A Mind Set Free. The CD series and book are yours for a gift of $45 or more. The DVD series and book for $80 or more. The Overcoming Life series will show you how to heal from the scars of rejection, why we compare ourselves to others, the key to dealing with discouragement, and so much more.
Here's the truth, and that is you're either an overcomer or you're being overcome. There are many challenges in this life that all of us face on a daily basis. And we have to make the decision. I'm either going to be an overcomer or I'm going to be overcome.
When you support Marriage Today with a gift of any amount, we'll send you the book, A Mind Set Free. Discover the joy of being an overcomer. Experience the series, The Overcoming Life, today.
One of the things I love about the Bible is it tells the dirt on everybody. I mean, very few people come out unscathed. Jesus obviously does because He's perfect. But you know, you read about Peter and the mistakes that he made, and Paul, and in this case, you know, Thomas. And he doubted. But you know, the disciples doubted. Jesus' own family doubted Him. A lot of people had some serious doubts because that never happened in the world before, that a man came and died and rose again from the dead. And so they had doubts. And I know that many of us are dealing with doubts in our lives. You know, I was preaching one time, you know, I'm a preacher, and I was preaching one time from Malachi 3, and that's where it talks about tithing, and a lot of people get turned off by that. But listen to what I'm saying, is God says in Malachi 3, He says, you know, you've withheld the tithe, 10% from me. He says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse and test me and see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven, rebuke the devourer, so on and so forth. Here's what I love about that scripture. He says, bring the whole tithe in the storehouse, test me, and see. And see. In other words, even in your doubt, even when you're struggling in your faith, when you step out and you do what God tells you to do, you will see tangible results. God did not say, bring the whole tithe in the storehouse and feel, or bring the whole tithe in the storehouse and hear. He said, when you obey me, you will see what you're wanting to see. Not until you obey. When we get into a circumstance of doubt, the worst thing that happens is we lock up. Because we don't understand why a person died. We don't understand why God did this or didn't do that. We don't understand something in the Word. Maybe we have somebody in our ear, like the skeptic I was talking about in the teaching today. Someone who just doesn't believe. Someone who won't believe. Someone who's always talking negative things about God or religion or something like that, and they're just in our ear. And the worst thing that can happen is we get on our heels and we stop obeying. We stop praying. We stop trusting. We stop seeking what the Word of God has to say. Listen, and the more you do that, the less you see God move, because God only responds to faith. God will not build a relationship with us based on mistrust. And that's what doubt and unbelief is. It's just mistrust. It says, I don't know if I can trust you or not. I don't know, believe if your word is true. Now listen, if God had ever failed a person in eternity, He'd put up with that. If God had ever made a mistake, if he had a bad track record, I mean, He could understand why people might not trust Him. Never in the history of the universe has God ever broken a promise. And He'll never break a promise to you. So if you're on your heels, if you're like Thomas and you're struggling with your faith, you're struggling maybe with an issue, my encouragement to you today is trust Jesus. Thomas was wrong. Thomas was wrong. And Jesus was gracious to him in his doubt. God will be gracious to you in your times of doubt. But remember this, He's Lord. His word is true. He'll never fail you. Believe in Him. Maybe you've had a devastating event in your life that caused you to, kind of get into a neutral or negative mode. Jesus Christ rose from the dead. He's alive, and He's alive for you today. I hope that's an encouragement to you. I mean, Easter, how much more encouraging can you get than this? That Jesus is alive, and He's alive in our lives to help us through anything that we're going through, to give us the victory for life. We hope that this has been an encouragement to you. And listen, we're only able to come to you right now because of our partners that stand with us financially every month. Karen and I are asking you to become one of our partners. Here's how you can do it.
Everywhere you look, marriages and families are under attack. What God intended as a fundamental blessing to society has been reduced to a coin flip, with 50% of marriages ending in divorce. Children are being raised in broken homes. Young men and women are questioning the value and purpose of marriage. These are our neighbors, our friends, our family. We are all affected by this stark reality. But it doesn't have to be this way. God did not create marriage to fail. And regardless of how dark, how difficult it may seem, with the right teaching, the right training, the right commitment, every marriage has a 100% chance of success. Marriage Today is committed to sharing this message of hope with men and women around the world, providing a wealth of biblically based resources through seminars, CD and DVD series, television broadcasts, and much more. Join us by becoming a rock-solid partner today. Together, we can help shape the future of marriage in America and across the globe. Choose the partnership level that's right for you. For $14, $28, or $56 per month, you can get the tools you need to succeed in marriage, including online access to the Dream Marriage Library, CD and DVD lessons shipped to your door, and exclusive partner perks. And if you become a rock-solid partner at the $28 or $56 per month level, you'll receive the Every Great Marriage video series and the Mountaintop of Marriage as our special gifts. Join us as we work to rebuild the foundation of family. Become a rock-solid partner today.
Jesus not only was resurrected, but it blew the doors off of everything. I mean, think about it. No one had to roll the stone away. It was just so powerful. And when you think about that kind of life living in all of us who accept Him, there's such a power within us of not only meekness, because Jesus is meek and He's gentle, but a power of overcoming everything, death, sin, a bad marriage. It's just, it's just such a special time to remember. We carry within ourselves a life that is so worth living for.
Thank you for watching Marriage Today with Jimmy and Karen. Follow your interests and get social by connecting with Jimmy and Karen and the Ministry of Marriage Today on Twitter.
This program is made possible by the generous support of our faithful partners.